The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Dylan J. Schlender presiding. Your rise for the Honorable Judge Schlender.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People vs. Vampire's Kiss. This 1988 film stars Nic Cage as Peter Lowe, a slick New York publisher who believes he is turning into a vampire. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Maynard Bangs, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the jury, when Ryan Luis Rodriguez initially assigned me this case, I told him I didn't want to do it. I asked him if maybe somebody else could take it, or maybe I could be assigned an assistant to help manage the work. And Ryan's eyes went wild, practically bulging out his skull. And he said to me, "Rob, there is no one else on this entire podcast that I could possibly ask to share such a horrible job. You're the lowest on the totem pole here, Rob. The lowest. Do you realize that?"
Why do I sound like Donald Trump? That's
Order in the court, please. Let him finish. Go on.
Every other podcaster here has been here longer than you, Rob. Every one. And even if Big Ben was here even one day longer than you, I still wouldn't ask him to partake in such a miserable job as long as you were around. That's right, Rob. It's a horrible, horrible job. I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to, or I'll fire you. You understand? Do you? Good. I cried myself to sleep that night, but for some reason I still showed up to work today. I don't know why. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bangs. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Galen Howard. Please present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor, and gentlemen of the jury. The film that I am defending today, I have the noble task of defending, a task that I requested. I had seen this film get maligned, get shoved to the corner, and dismissed as a freak show oddity, as the spectacle in which we see Nicolas Cage go insane, Nicolas Cage be more Nicolas Cage than we had imagined Nicolas Cage being 20 years later. A 23-year-old Nicolas Cage completely losing his mind, eating cockroaches, wearing fake plastic teeth, screaming, "I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire," times 15 to a very calm New York cityscape. And I look at this film and I see myself. I see people all around me. I see a film that admits that it is insane. I see a film that admits it's insane because the environment it grew up in is insane. The Bret Easton Ellis machismo laden white collar Renfields running around. That is the insanity that this film sees. This is the insanity that film reflects. And in moments, I would say brilliantly. And I, again, am honored to take on the task of defending this said film, Vampire's Kiss, 1988.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. Mr. Bangs, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, I got to start with the elephant in the room, Your Honor, and that's Nic Cage's performance as Peter Lowe. It is notoriously over the top, outlandish. It's absolutely surreal. It's inspired a slew of memes. These memes are not meant as a compliment to Cage's performance either. But listen, you're either here for it or you're not. But if you're not, this whole movie hurts. It will just be you cringing for an hour and 40 minutes. And if you take away Cage's performance, there's not really a movie here. There's really nothing else going on except for watching Nicolas Cage be batshit the entire time. And if that annoys you, this movie has absolutely zero appeal. Now, if you are here for it, now I have to believe it's because you want to laugh at it. Because it's so ludicrously big, it's clownish. The Cage went for this sort of surrealist style. It strips away any real emotional stakes this film could drive into you. You see what I did there?
Oh,
Whoa!
Mr. Maynard, you are a thin ice.
But seriously, it's really hard to feel anything for Peter because he's a caricature. He's not a character. He's an experiment by Cage. He doesn't feel like a real person, maybe because he isn't. We can get into that later, perhaps. But you're either really terribly annoyed by his entire performance, or you find it hilarious because, let's be honest, it's laughably bad. And then the film enters into a so bad it's good type of place, and we know where that leads.
You know, Mr. Howard, Mr. Bangs does bring up a good point. I have a feeling a lot of this case is going to hinge on how people feel about Nic Cage. So how do you respond to this? He's going too far, and if you're not here for it, you don't enjoy it.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, as he said, the elephant in the room. It's generally the first order of business that people will bring up with this film, and I would say, I understand that. His performance is absolutely outlandish. It is exaggerated. It is an insane performance, and I think that is I think the character was written as a man losing his mind. I don't think anyone could have predicted the directions that Nic Cage takes it in, but I think that's what makes it so compelling. And but then back to my original point, there is a method to the quote unquote madness here. This is a character who is slowly losing his mind, and we can argue later of what of that is imagined, what of that is real. But regardless, he's someone who is losing his mind from the day in day out of his position as a literary agent. Someone who is day in and day out competing for having to compete with the male machismo energy around him, and is someone that we see also throughout the film pursuing love. And I think that dichotomy, that opposition, that contradiction is what is driving him insane. And so he of course his performance begins insane and gets even more insane. And it's to argue that this character is already on the brink when we meet him, regardless of what the encounter, that the said encounter, what validity that has later on, of whether it is turned him or not. That can be argued later, but I think there is the performance itself is informed by how the character was written.
All right, so Mr. Maynard, if you'd like to continue or address anything that Mr. Howard just brought up.
Well, one of the things is that I think one of the reasons it's so jarring is it's only Cage is that big, right? Everyone else is fairly naturalistic and fairly real world believable, and yet I don't think that they respond to Cage in the way you would expect him to. Like you said, he's raving through the streets, and yeah, New York is full of crazy people, but once they start carrying around weapons and being covered in blood, you get police attention. He bursts into the ladies' room chasing one of his employees, and there happens to be another bystander there in the ladies' room who just says, "What are you doing here?" They would have screamed and shrieked and got him kicked out. If he's going to act like a lunatic, either the world needs to respond to him like he's a lunatic, or we need to establish that the world is just as crazy as he is. And I don't think we do either thing.
Would you care to respond to that, Mr. Howard? Do we establish him as crazy enough, and do people respond to him accordingly?
I think why we only see Nicolas Cage at this level of energy and insanity is because it's from his perspective. And I think, as the film goes onward, it gets more and more distorted. He begins hallucinating. There are elements of that bleed into his reality. His reality gets more and more distorted, and I think that is what we're seeing here. We're seeing two things here. We're seeing both his perception get distorted, and we're also seeing I think we're also seeing a sort of absurdist commentary on the authority that people in his position had at that time in those corporate positions. And there is a sort of absurdist energy that the author Joseph Minion explored in After Hours and other films, and we're seeing that at play here as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Howard. Mr. Bangs, if you'd like to move on to your next point or address anything else.
Yeah, I'm kind of continuing on that. To me, I
Please.
see Cage's performance is so dominating, so suffocating in the film that I think it comes from a place of narcissism, maybe from his youthful exuberance. And I think it's incredibly self-indulgent. I think that's actually the word that New York Times used too in one of their critiques of it. And if you look at his behavior behind the scenes, it seems to kind of match. Around this time, Cage he'd done Moonstruck, he'd done Raising Arizona. Besides that, he'd done a lot of Coppola films, obviously, because that's his uncle. And I think he kind of had a chip on his shoulder and kind of felt he was untouchable. And if you see his behavior on the set here, first he dropped out of the film when he knew Minion was not going to direct it. The screenwriter Minion was originally going to direct it, and he dropped out. He had to be talked back into coming back. He did that great method acting thing where he essentially acted like a bizarre lunatic all throughout the show. He was very cold to his co-star, Jennifer Beals, who played Rachel. And during their intimate scenes, he insisted hot yogurt be poured on his feet to help him get aroused. I don't know how I would feel.
What?
That's a true thing. He insisted on eating the cockroach. That was not in the script initially. He demanded to eat the cockroach, and first they're like, "We don't know," and he's like, "I want to do it." And he gets them to run down to the basement and get, I think they're water bugs, and he eats two on camera, which of course they couldn't tell the PETA people because even cockroaches have rights. And he fought tooth and nail to have a real bat brought to set, despite repeated insistence that they're dangerous. And luckily they finally talked him out of it. But he was trying to send assistants down to the zoo to capture bats and put them in a cooler. He was thinking about ordering them from Mexico illegally and have them brought in, and they had to explain to him, no, if it bites you, you die, and there's no movie. He was just a complete madman. And a lot of this is, I think, because director Robert Bierman, he mostly did commercials and stuff before this. I don't think he had the clout to be able to stand up to him. And I think he was willing to just sort of go along. Whatever Nick thinks is good, and we're going to let him do whatever he wants because he's a fairly big name for this movie. I think he should have reined him in, a little bit. Instead, he completely encourages him.
All right, Mr. Howard, should he have been reined in? It does sound like a baffling behind the scenes here.
Absolutely, yes. The stories are on the set are notorious. I can't argue that was the only method to get where we to reach our destination. That there wouldn't have been a maybe more reasonable way for him to conduct himself. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to the product, and I think that the narcissism, the immersion and insanity that he brought to set served the character. Is it is it the only way that you could that could be done? No. Is it could it have been done more reasonably? No, but I cannot argue with the results.
All right, Mr. Maynard, we'll let the jury decide on Nicolas Cage's behavior on and off screen. If you'd like to move on.
Thank you. One of the things I have trouble grappling with this film is that it basically follows an unreliable protagonist, right? And we essentially see the film through Peter's perception. And the film shows us that he's not trustworthy because Peter is going insane. He hallucinates throughout the film. Essentially, seemingly, for those who haven't seen it, the entire relationship with Rachel, who he believes is a vampire, who he believes bites him and draws him under her power, only exists in his mind. And we get a couple of little cuts there where he's talking to nobody when he's in the shower, when he's looking in the mirror thinking his reflection's disappearing and we can obviously see him, that clue us in a little earlier. She is based on a real woman that he possibly did meet in a club, maybe even talk to, but they're not involved. She never bit him, and essentially the film is all about Peter's descent into complete madness. Most of the plot of the film occurs entirely in his mind. We also see him carry out an entire conversation with his therapist in his mind, and that raises the question, are any of the earlier conversations with the therapist real? How can we know for sure? Does he even have a therapist? That raises further questions. Does he even really have a job as a literary agent? Does he actually have a secretary named Alva that he abuses and berates and menaces and threatens? Does he really kill a strange woman in a club by biting her on the neck? Everything in the film becomes suspect to scrutiny on whether they legitimately occurred or not.
Mr. Howard, I would like for you to weigh in on this. Do you think we're seeing everything is an illusion, or some of it real, some of it fake? I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yes, I think once I think he becomes unreliable after his encounter, after he becomes kind of obsessed with this with the Rachel character, which with Jennifer Beals character, he becomes one could argue he becomes less of a vampire and almost more of like an impish Renfield, and as far as his madness and obsession. And I think
eating bugs,
exactly, all of those things, and I think that is then throughout. After that point, his perspective becomes more distorted, more unreliable. That's when he hallucinates the interaction with his therapist, who I think is real. I think those early on interactions are not imagined, but I think obviously, because I think everything that he is imagining is derived from something in his life. So I think that's where that's what anchors the film, and not just without it being just everything's a dream, whoopsie daisy, blah blah blah. It's more like, no, these are the elements that we're holding his life together, and here we watch the seams come undone.
All right, so Mr. Marion, a little from column A, a little from column B.
Yeah. I mean, like was mentioned, I mean, one of the extremes, it is possible that nothing we see is real. It's all just the mental gymnastics of a deeply disturbed individual. But if that's true, then we have to ask ourselves, what are the stakes? If nothing happens outside a deranged mind, nobody's actually being hurt or affected, and essentially nothing happens the entire film. And that's actually the interpretation of the film I prefer. That everything is in his head, because it shores up some real loose ends plot-wise, even if it's a bit of a cop-out. Now, if we accept, and this from some commentary I've seen from the director and Cage, Mr. Howard's interpretation seems to be the one they were actually going for. And that basically everything we see is largely occurring, and the main hallucinations are the relationship with Rachel, the final meeting with the therapist, and now that introduces a lot of weird scenarios for me. For instance, like, why is Peter not fired and arrested for chasing his female employee through a building and into the ladies' room in front of dozens of witnesses? The film shows us, yes, that he has misogynistic bosses. I actually find that meeting so surreal that I struggle to believe that it did really happen. But if we accept this meeting occurred in reality, then I find it hard to believe they would tolerate such antics from he's a relatively low literary agent. He's got one secretary, which would bring about very unpleasant litigation, even in the 80s. I just don't think that would be tolerated.
All right. So, Mr. Howard, how do you square the reality with what we're seeing?
Yeah, again, I think I think the one moment.
Take your time.
Thank you.
A chick mate.
Oh no!
Hey,
Be nice.
hey, no! All right.
Order, my court.
Order. Objection. All right.
Sustained.
Thank you. So yes, again, I think the argument as far as what the reality is, what and where it deviates, I think, and again, as I said before, it's the seams start coming undone after his encounter. I think I think his encounter in the his encounter with his with his secretary, and then subsequently with the other men in the boardroom. Again, I think we're I think there is a slight satire and absurdism that is taken to their approach, showing the misogyny of that environment, and showing that he can get away with these with this outrageous behavior. I don't again, it doesn't and that's only first half of the film. It doesn't escalate to the point where he's in question for potentially killing someone. As the assaults get as the assaults in his behavior get more outlandish, more criminal. But I think for now we're kind of set in a slightly exaggerated, but still I think grounded portrayal of the sort of toxic masculinity of that era.
Yeah, and I mean, even as things do escalate, if Peter really does kill that woman in the club, although I think it would take her longer to bleed out, and
yes.
And he would be covered in a lot more blood. Security walks a man out covered in blood, seemingly not injured himself. You'd think they'd immediately hand him over to the police. That's something which warrants investigation. Why doesn't anyone call the police, like I said, when he rants and raves and stalks the streets armed with a weapon and covered in blood? There's white privilege and there's male privilege, but those things end once you become a threat to other white people, to other male people. Those people are going to call the police too, and they're going to win out. We stick white people in insane asylums and jails, plenty in the 80s too. I don't think this guy is going to be allowed to rant and rave on a street corner, not covered in blood with a weapon. Not that way. We even hear sirens. We know there's police in the area. They'd absolutely question him. And that also raises this other question I have is, if Peter is this really powerful guy, as you've put in, that he's this very decent level executive, if he's got this insulated protection, and he has this powerful job, why is he strapped for cash throughout the entire film? He's a high-powered literary agent, and a $50 cab ride wipes him out. He can't afford $20, I think they're glass fangs, so he settles for the $3 ones. We see he has a credit card in his wallet, which he doesn't use for the fangs. Maybe it's maxed out. This is a lot of financial hardship for a man of his supposed standing, who seems to still be going to work every day and is thus collecting a paycheck. Why do we see him so hard up throughout the film if he's coming from that position of power?
So are you saying that this bolsters the argument that you were making earlier, that he was never employed or powerful, like that's why he's broke?
I do think so, yeah.
All right,
I
Mr. Howard,
think a lot of these incredulous happenings, Your Honor, are easy to hand wave away when we say it's all in his troubled mind. But at the same time, when you do that, you hand wave away any and all of the stakes.
All right. We've spent a lot of time on the reality of the film. Is there any other points you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, just largely just kind of to top this off. If we talk about the theme of this film, whether it's all in his mind or not, what do we take from this film when the credits roll? Besides the fact that it's fun to watch Nic Cage be really crazy, although I can do that in Face Off and I can do that in Bad Lieutenant. Cage says on the DVD commentary track, "I always saw the movie as a story of a man whose loneliness and inability to find love literally drives him insane." Now, if we accept the fact that he doesn't get insane until he meets Rachel, he seems to have some relationship with a woman named Jackie that we see at the beginning of the film, who he then stands up on a date. So he clearly does have romantic prospects, and yet he goes crazy in the middle of what seems to be a relatively happy relationship. And ultimately, no catharsis is offered for this man who clearly struggles with mental health. Right? He gets a wooden stake driven through his ribs at the end, which wouldn't go through his ribs, by the way. That wood would just splinter. It would not penetrate his ribs, I don't think. It's not hardened wood or anything. So if he actually does get killed at the end, he never gets the help he needs within the film, even though he sought counseling and did generally the right things he needed to do. If we're believe what we see, he just gets killed, and that's it. It's just a fuck of a bummer at the end. And that's it with that, Your Honor. I'll rest.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Bangs. Mr. Howard, you may present anything else you would like to for your case.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I think. I think in this case his struggles with relationships are I think are motivated and move forward by his lot in life, by his he certainly has prospects, but like many of us, we aren't equipped to pursue or be emotionally available for those prospects. And I think that is, and I was familiar with that with Nicolas Cage's assessment before, and I think it's apt. I think it's incredibly apt. I think he's certainly, he's a young successful man in that era in the late 80s, and I think it's like a lot of people, he is by what he is taught as value and has emotional philosophical importance. I think he is in conflict throughout the film, and he doesn't know how to. He's someone who isn't taught how to be emotionally available and how to. I think his inability to connect with Jackie, I think, is a tragic element of the film. I mean, I think if I were to make any criticism, I would have loved to have seen that explored a little further, but I think it's something that is impactful, that there's someone that I think it does have the opportunity to connect with, and because he's someone who's taught to pursue power and accolades and and in this kind of approval from the men around him. I think he's someone who's his values and are completely screwy, and I think that is really what is driving him insane. And I think the vampire encounter is more of a metaphor for that, and I think that's what makes the film so much fun to watch, is that it toys with the element of the vampire, and is it real or isn't it? The music score plays into that, the cinematography, it plays into a lot of those tropes and really embraces that, in service of kind of the metaphor of his mental and emotional dissolve.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. Mr. Mayor, would you like to respond to his emotional unavailability as maybe driving some of these relationship issues?
I mean, to me, someone who's emotionally unavailable then doesn't look for love, right? He wouldn't even care that he was missing it. You know, if he's the type of man who looks for approval from his peers, his other powerful men types, well, he's going out partying and hooking up with hot chicks, seemingly occasionally. I call it good. What's there to be depressed about? What's there to go insane about? You got it all right, man. You got money. You got privilege. You got girls. What's wrong? As far as the vampire metaphor, I see the vampire metaphor as, you know, the screenwriter Minion was in a very toxic relationship at the time, and I think it's sort of a backhanded slap at his girlfriend at the time, who actually produced this movie, is that she was sucking the life from him. And I think it's supposed to be a hurtful portrayal. I think it's supposed to be a personal message to her that kind of just got turned into a big movie.
All right, Mr. Howard, if you'd like to continue with any other points you have.
Yeah, well, I would like to touch on Maynard's point there.
Go for it.
Yes, of course. I will.
Objection.
No!
Overruled for now.
Overruled. Yes. Okay. As far as his emotional unavailability, I think there are. I think if you talk to most people, I think many people will tell you that they have pursued relationships while emotionally unavailable and have been pursued, and often successfully, by emotionally unavailable men. I think that's I think you can talk to many people who have spent entire year-long relationships with many years in relationships with men who pursued them, who are chronically emotionally unavailable. And I think that's the paradox. I think he's certainly trying to kind of have the freedom of that his emotional unavailability grants him. I think when we see the two of them, they're out. They've both been drinking. They're having a great time. But there's but naturally he wants something more, and they try to pursue that. But he then
what more is there?
But then he becomes
drinking,
more
fun, sex. You got a good Nic Cage. Come on.
No.
You got it all, baby.
Oh, but he doesn't, and that's what drives him mad. And I think as far as what Minion's inspiration was, whether this was a dig at his ex or not, I think Bierman and Nic Cage, I think have I think that's I think have taken that story, and I think that whether it's whether what his message to his girlfriend was, I think they all the creative parties involved have taken it and elevated that to a metaphor of his emotional downfall and mental and emotional downfall, I think. And so I think whether initially he was letting off some steam or trying to resolve some hurt feelings, I think is irrelevant. I think what they took, if they were just if all the other parties were just on the same level and just like fuck her, blah blah blah, ha 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 ha, what do they write about me in the women's restroom? That's it would have been something different. But I think we have a complex story here rendered by all the parties in play.
All right. Was there anything else you'd like to say in defense of the film, Mr. Howard?
Yeah, I think again, this is I think this film is a brilliant genre mashup. I think and I think that's what really I think that's what compelled me from the beginning, is that this is a very it's a take on the vampire mythos that we hadn't seen before. And I think I think especially with the sort of the seductive and sexual qualities that were imbued into kind of male vampire characters throughout film history before that. I think it's a kind of a brilliant take to to show a man who's kind of rendered impotent by those emotionally and physically impotent by those elements, and that is someone who is ultimately by leaning too into his own sexuality is driven mad. And I think where it's become it's not a source of power, but a source of destruction, of self-destruction. And I think that part is what makes this film so distinct, and what I think justifies the insanity that Nic Cage brought to this film.
All right, and would you like to rest there?
The defense will take a sip of uncaffeinated tea and rest.
All right. Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Bangs, you may begin.
Your Honor, distinguished members of the court, there is an audience for this movie. Maybe there wasn't back in 1989 when it flopped at the box office, barely making back a third of its budget, but there's one now. It's the same audience that loves films like The Room or Birdemic or Mac and Me. People who bask in the glory of movies that make you say, what the fuck? Why did they make this? Did they think people would like this? People who are entertained by movies that make the rest of us cringe, mainly because they make the rest of us cringe. All the people who love movies like Vampire's Kiss do so with a touch of irony. They don't really see it as a revelatory exploration of the effects of societal isolation upon the psyche of man, or whatever Nic Cage dreams he sees in this movie. They see it as a movie where Nic Cage does what he does best: act absolutely batshit crazy. They see it as a blueprint for that particular facet of Cage's career. If you're into that sort of thing, this is that. It's Nic Cage acting batshit crazy for an hour and 40 minutes in several situations that may not actually happen anywhere other than his mind. With no solutions to offer about the mental health problems it could potentially be shedding light on. Just Nic Cage doing his thing. Again, if that's what you're here for, that's what you get. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bangs. Mr. Howard, you may present your closing argument.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Fang you.
No.
Objection!
No,
Objection! No. There will be no dad puns obstructing my argument. Thank you. All right. The defense continues. All right. Members of the jury, I respond to Mr. Bangs' categorization of this film and the audience that it garnered. I was among those who was familiar with this film, who was a fan of this film, long before the memes and the gifs and the How Did This Get Made episode that a podcast that popularized this film, and also covered all of the other films that Mr. Bangs mentioned in this category. And I was disheartened when I saw the sort of dubious praise and fame that this film garnered, because I think it undermines the brilliance of this film. Is this a perfect film? No. I think there, you can argue there's an imbalance of tone at times, and the character is insufferable, but that is also the point. This character is an unlovable. This character is chronically unlovable and incapable of love. And I think Joseph Minion, who explored the kind of Kafkaesque insanity of New York in his film in the brilliant Scorsese film After Hours, I think is giving us, in fact, I think a more sobering account of what that culture and city and atmosphere can do to one's psyche. And I think his whereas in his first film he was taking a sort of Alice in Wonderland approach, I think now he's taking a sort of gothic horror take on on that level of insanity, and I think he does it brilliantly. I think that's that is the film that should be remembered and honored from this day forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Howard. All right, members of the jury, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, and Mr. I'm a vampire, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all... It's true, our neighbors are not happy. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
You might wonder what it's like to be kissed by a vampire, but I hear it's a pain in the neck.
I love it.
So is the bailiff a dad? Because he's making a lot of dad jokes.
Hey, anyone could be a dad, but not everyone could be a father.
That's right.
Yes.
That's his personal business, and he'll thank you to not ask.
That's opposite. It's anyone can be a father, not everyone can be a dad.
Oh, well, I mean, who cares? The point is he abandoned his children in Scotland.
Well, it sucks to be him.
All right, this film is very hard for me to pin down. There's just so much going on, so I would thank the both of you to just get on the same page right now. So whatever the verdict is, it's not on my conscience. That being said, Dylan, Ryan, what did you think of this film?
Wow, this fucking movie. I think that Nicolas Cage is in a comedy, but no one else is. And not only is he in a comedy, he's in a silent comedy. Like it's very much an outlandish performance by a very outlandish person, but I really have no idea what to make of this movie. Like there's no way he wasn't in on the joke. That is very clear.
No, it's intentional. His performance is how outlandish. Yeah.
I think Maynard's evidence of the stuff behind the scenes speaks to that.
Yeah, I mean, the yogurt alone is like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Like, come on, you're an actor. You're an actor. That's your job.
Oh, it increases his legend. That actors love that sort of thing. Like, yeah, he really ate bugs on set. They love it.
But like, all I know is that this was the wrong movie to watch in the midst of a depressive episode. But that's how I ended up. So I did not enjoy this. It was made worse by watching it on Pluto, which had the damn commercials for the California Institute of Sciences every 5 minutes. But Dylan, what do you think?
Don't hold that against it.
Well, I came into this one pretty 50-50. I think when Maynard says, look, either you're here for the Cage performance or you're not. And I got to say, at first, I really wasn't. It's just like, yeah, this is pretty painful. But Galen brought up some very good points about how this is, about the commentary of it, how it is a bit Kafkaesque, and it's like, then it made me start thinking when I was listening to his argument, I was like, God, you know what? This movie is like Showgirls, only it's about a vampire, a guy who thinks he's a vampire instead of a, whore that thinks she's a stripper. Well, no, I like Showgirls quite a bit.
It's a guilty film.
And so I just think there's more there than I gave it credit for before the case started. So Ben, you got to lay some thoughts out here.
I think it mostly does come down to two main points. Are you in with Cage's performance being off the walls, and do you sort of buy that he's a unavailable man, and the vampires thing is like a an analogy for that when he's actually more of a Renfeld? I do think there's interesting ideas there, but they don't really come to fruition. So it's sort of that did he meet enough on the prosecution side to push it to guilty? Because I do hate that there's not an answer there. I wish they did have something, but the idea is good, and Cage's performance, you can't look away from it, and it is intentional. So it's really hard for me to slide around on it.
I will say that they did remake this movie, and it was called Joker.
No, they remade it sooner than that. It was American Psycho.
American Psycho did it better.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Okay, so I guess I'll lock it in. I did not enjoy this whatsoever. Even on the level of a performance that it has to be seen to believe. I do agree that you probably should watch it, but I conclude that it's probably also not very good, and not in a way that's like, oh, it's so good, it's fun. it was a punishing sit for me, at least. So I'm going to go guilty.
All right. Dylan?
That's fair. Yeah, because I kind of want to watch. Actually, I kind of don't want to watch it again, but I really enjoyed the conversation about it. And, I think when 50-50, I think Galen did enough to show that this is more than just like a room or Birdemic kind of thing. So I'm going to give the nod to Galen with a not guilty.
Damn it. I told you guys not to do that.
I thought Ryan was going to be not guilty, and so I had it written down during the case. It's up to you, Big Ben.
Yeah, I agree it's not a room or a Birdemic. I also agree that this isn't a movie for me. I did not like this film. But this isn't a court of my opinion. I do think Rob's case did lay out a lot of what I didn't like about it. There was an answer for the most part from Galen's side.
Listen to your heart, Ben.
I love the resigned side
because I just hate it so much.
Oh, I feel so bad for you in this position. I don't know what to do. I
feel
sorry,
from
Ben.
a burden of proof perspective, it probably is not guilty, but I hate it. I hate this movie. No one should watch it, but I think it probably should be free to go.
All right, so
let's go tell that very handsome judge.
Okay. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. It pains me, but in the case of The People versus the Vampire's Kiss, we find the defendant not guilty, but by a hair.
Boo! All right, well, I'm the judge. I shouldn't be booing. The verdict is so rendered. Vampire's Kiss is free to go with the comfort of knowing that this trial was all in Galen's head and the movie was never in any real danger. Court is adjourned.
This is Mumbly Mumblerson reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice, I think. I've been very depressed since my wife let me, and I'm causing to lash out. Maynard Bangs, would you care to share your dumb thoughts on the jury's verdict?
This is kind of what I expected. I thought this was a very slippery eel to pin down because a lot of it hinges on how you feel about Cage's performance. Either you're entertained by it or you're not. And that's kind of subjective, hard to prove what's there and what's not. I laughed a lot at this movie. I don't know if I was supposed to, but I did. So I can live with this verdict.
Thank you. Get out of my face. And here comes Galen Howard. Excuse me, can we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict?
Oh, sure. Yes. I feel vindicated. I feel like this. I feel like I defended an honorable and often misunderstood film, and I think many films out there are noble in their pursuit and misunderstood. And but again, as his honor pointed out, this movie was all in my head, and so now I'm going to go watch the American Psycho musical, starring Nicolas Cage, Talia Shire, and a giant avocado. Thank you.
Love it.
Thank you very much, he said sarcastically. That's all we have from the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for the worst part of the show, when I'm locked in my sensory deprivation tank and some dummies discuss post-trial analysis.
So spicy today.
Mumbly.
Get
in there, Mumbly! Jesus! Okay,
he
he's
has
gone.
issues.
I hear the bailiff needs a roommate, so maybe.
I would watch that show.
Anyway, this is kind of how I expected it to go. I had a lot of trouble writing this case because I think the plot holes that I wanted to see, like I did feel it was like, well, he hallucinated all that. Whenever you see something like that, a wizard did it.
Yeah.
So it was really hard to
It was
pin
a
down.
good case, though, man. This was a good conversation. I like this one.
I do think we talked about it, but yeah, I think as far as guilty, not guilty, really depends if you want to watch Nic Cage be crazy. If that's what you're there for, that is what you get. So Galen, what have you been doing lately? What's been keeping you busy?
Oh man. Coming back into into society. I've and in the last
You've been
year,
rehabilitated.
Rehabilitated. Yes. I'm slowly learning how to have like conversations again in public. I'm not just hiding behind a microphone like I'm doing right now. So
It's not hiding.
Yeah, exactly. Things are well in my world. I'm still do a little bit of the acting here and there. I can be seen on the show on the final episode of this season of Physical with Rose Byrne. If people are unfamiliar with a small franchise known in some circles as Star Wars, you will see me on Book of Boba Fett this last season.
Are you going to be Baby Chewie?
My character might be. I think it's argued. I think the jury is out. Was whether I am not. My character is or is not a diminutive shaven Wookiee. Well, I think perhaps in season 2 we'll explore my origins.
Yes, maybe you'll get a name in season 2.
Right?
Very possible.
Yes. I've been lobbying. I've been lobbying for my character to quit the clerk job at Mos Espa and help reassemble the Max Rebo band and take them on the road tour. That's what I've been lobbying for.
You're gonna join the Jizz band? You?
Absolutely. No, I want to. I want to be like Almost Famous, but with Max Rebo band.
A Jizz lover. We have one on the show finally.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what it's called, Schlenzo. It's called Jizz.
I actually do know that.
I play the Jizz deep into the night. Let me tell you.
Exactly. But we can't say jizz again, or we will have to pay.
Yeah. So Galen, that's how we know you really arrived, because you have your own Wikipedia article now for your appearance.
I am immortalized on the Wikipedia. Yes.
Yeah, that's big. That's big. That's good.
Right. And yes, yeah. It was that, and then when a lovely Australian Star Wars fan cosplayed me at a celebration. That was my other. That was my
awesome.
My other point of arrival.
That's pretty great.
Yes. Yeah, if you go on my Instagram, I think my pinned image is a costume comparison of myself and a wonderful cosplayer who got like the insignia down and everything. It was very cool.
So you just need like in the card game, right? And then you're set. You did the trifecta.
Yeah. Well, yes, and
action figure.
Pop
Do they
vinyl.
still make a card game?
Pop vinyl.
You probably
preferably.
could get an action figure.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You probably could get it. You probably could get like a Star Wars
Technically,
series.
yeah.
No, Galen would
That's
be
possible.
a great pop vinyl, because since this is not a visual medium, Galen has a great mustache that would translate very well.
Yeah, the little
than mine?
the kind of the 70s mullet and mustache combo, I think is it's a signature look for sure. They graciously let me keep my signature look, which I think is I'm very grateful for.
Actually, no, that is pretty sweet, because now you're in it and immediately recognizable. Like I just saw the pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Galen, 100%.
Unlike Daniel Craig in Force Awakens.
Right.
He did get to keep his mustache. They just put the helmet.
Yeah, you just put the helmet over him. Yeah, exactly.
They digitally removed the mustache later.
Oh, God.
Now, we always ask for recommendations for movies that think people should see. So what is a movie that our listeners should see?
I have to say, leaning more into the just so bad it's crazy kind of variety. I've been obsessed recently with the film actually that was also popularized recently on the How Did This Get Made podcast, which was the Brian Bosworth film Stone Cold. If anyone if you have not seen this film, if you enjoy just balls out just insane. And also, and if you like with this film, if you needed even more toxic masculinity, you're gonna get it in droves in the film Stone Cold, where a delightfully wooden Brian Bosworth goes up against a biker gang, and there is a there are just mass explosions. There are incredible one-liners. There's a motorcycle Viking funeral. There are also incredible mullets. And lots of face damage. It is an absolute blast. No pun intended, because there's a lot of explosions.
1991.
Yes,
there's a great riff tracks of it.
Here's what you really need to know: starring Lance Henriksen. So
yes,
that,
Lance
should let you know
the
level of quality we are talking about here.
Lance Henriksen plays the villain, and it is delicious, and especially to see Lance Henriksen just eat the scenery, and then just cut back to Brian Bosworth being like, no. It's amazing. It's fantastic. And William Forsythe is in there.
He's good.
Oh, he's so good. Yeah, both William Forsythe and Sam McMurray from Raising Arizona are in there. It's a wonderful cast of character actors, and from the stunt legend Kirk R. from Commando and many others, and then this was, I think, his second or third directorial debut. He had done Action Jackson before that, and this ups the action even more. It's a
but does it up the Jackson?
There are no Jacksons in it. There are no Jacksons.
No Tito.
I was going to say
that's unacceptable.
I think I think there are some Andrew Jacksons, but
nice. That's what Lance Henriksen was paid. A single
exactly.
Andrew Jackson.
So just a greasy fistful of them. I think that
he's paid in onion rings.
Yeah, I think most people were paid under the table for this movie. It has that feel, and I love it for it. So Stone Cold.
I smell a hacker night coming up.
I got to agree. You know what my favorite bit of Lance Henriksen trivia is? He actually played Charlie Bronson in a made-for-TV movie about Jill Ireland's life.
You would know.
But that said, Maynard, you were the other lawyer person. What is your recommendation today?
So Vampire's Kiss starred Maria Conchita Alonso as Alva, who the following year would also star in Predator 2. And there just so happens to be a new Predator movie that was recently released. And that's my recommendation this week. Prey from 2022, directed by Dan Trachtenberg. No relationship to Michelle, it turns out, which I was very impressed by. Set in 1719, a young Comanche woman, played by Amber Midthunder, love that name, has to survive and overcome a man-hunting extraterrestrial stalking the Great Plains. It's been a long time since we've had a great Predator movie. Though that didn't stop Hollywood from trying a lot. But they nailed it with this one, giving us everything you want to see in a Predator movie, namely a marauding alien and an incredibly resourceful human determined to outlast it. Just as Arnie learned at the end of the 87 original, it isn't always might or firepower that wins the day. The best hunter is one who's clever and can adapt quickly. Many people are calling this the best Predator since the original, and I can't think of a more lukewarm take than that. But I'll have to revisit this one a couple more times before I'm ready to declare it the best of the franchise. But the potential is there. Prey is currently streaming on Hulu.
I've been hearing a lot of people have been have been exploding over it, and it definitely raises curiosity. I know Dan Trachtenberg. I was very impressed with his entrance in the Cloverfield trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Took another kind of revisionist.
10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yes,
with John Goodman, yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely shown his ability to take a revisionist take on on a franchise. So
Yeah,
so
it's worth seeing. Don't listen to what the internet has to say. Never listen to what the internet has to
I've
say.
heard nothing
Maynard,
but
we
positive
are
things.
on the internet.
Listen to what we have to say, but we're the only good ones.
On the
Schlenzo,
internet.
you were the judge. What's your recommendation?
Thank you, Maynard. So I'm just going to go way off track here because last week I did something I hate doing. I watched a movie.
Mini golf.
In theaters. No, I love mini golfing. That was good. A shout out to T-Rex Mini Golf in Thompson.
Ooh.
So the kids, they really wanted to go to the theaters to see a movie. And the only kid movie that was playing in a time slot I could swing was DC League of Super Pets. And I was very skeptical, but honestly, it's all right. It's a basic superhero paint by numbers kind of movie. It skews more towards children rather than skewing towards man-children. Now, this one, it's not going to the top of anyone's favorites list, I'm sure, and it's still a far cry away from the greatness we know DC is capable of, as typified by the Timverse and shows like Batman the Brave and the Bold. But the fact that it wasn't just hot garbage is a win, and maybe this is the direction the rudderless DC movieverse needs to move.
That's the quote right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I want to
wasn't-
see that
yeah.
on like the poster.
Yeah, glowing recommendation. Recommendation.
Yeah,
Not hard-
there
not
are
hard
a lot
garbage.
there is a lot of funny stuff in there, but like it really is just a superhero movie. Like if you liked any superhero movie that's come out in the past 10 years, you'll like this one.
We did that
So,
one
yeah.
on Trailer Trashed on YouTube, and the trailer was painful to get through. And what I'm mad
it
is
so
that
was.
so it's DC Super Pets. You have a great supervillain animal in Dexstar, the cat who's a member of the Red Lantern Corps, one of my favorites, and they don't use them. Like, you don't need to make up evil gerbils or all
sequel.
these others. I want to see Dexstar.
Well, here we could get into the nerdery here because I'm pretty sure this takes place on an Earth that is not Earth 1.
oh, nerd.
No, because Lois
Going to
Lane.
bed. Ben, what's your
Lois-
recommendation?
Okay. You'll have to watch the movie to find out.
I'm going to recommend the movie that had a guest starring appearance in today's film and say everyone should check out 1922's Nosferatu. And yes, before Dracula, there was Nosferatu. And before that, there was Dracula. And while this film does borrow heavily from that novel, they did change the character's name. So intellectually distinct.
Count
We
Orlok.
owe it to Nosferatu for setting that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but
Nosferatu set that precedent.
yeah,
If you haven't checked this out, because it's a silent film, you're really doing yourself a disservice because these films ooze atmosphere. They managed to do a lot, even this early on. Count Orlok is creepy and otherworldly, but this is not one to check out on Pluto if you can help it, like I did, because those ads are jarring as hell for this kind of film. Find a way to watch it uninterrupted, turn those lights down, and let the pale light of German expressionism wash over you.
yeah.
You know, I've had enough of your science center bashing, you two. We're going to have a conversation after the show.
Buy the Kino Lorber Blu-ray if you can. That is a movie worth owning.
Yeah.
In whatever the highest condition that you can get it in.
Yeah. But for those of us who side with A Vampire's Kiss and want an insane batshit performance, you can also watch the Werner Herzog remake with Klaus Kinski.
Yes. Yep. And you can watch Shadow of a Vampire too.
Yes.
That's another good one. Ryan, send us on home.
Okie dokie. My recommendation this week concerns an earlier performance from Nicolas Cage. Francis Ford Coppola's Peggy Sue Got Married.
Ooh.
It is the second most popular time travel movie released in 1985, and I would argue that it more than nips at Back to the Future's heels. Kathleen Turner plays the titular character, a woman in her 30s sent for unknown reasons back into her high school body, which I guess predates Quantum Leap? Kinda? The downside is that Nicolas Cage's performance is distracting enough to almost derail the entire affair. It's truly a bad performance, but the movie more than makes up for it. Peggy Sue Got Married is for rent on Amazon, but you should buy the Blu-ray, which costs about $10.
Time traveling. But yeah, Nic Cage, it would be interesting to see his movies where he's the bit part and he just can't handle being the bit part and has to be too big.
That's the one. That's the one to watch.
Yeah, and it's like, my uncle says I could do whatever I want.
Wow, flawless Nic Cage impression. there.
Thank you.
Almost as good as your Gilbert Godfrey. What is this?
All right.
With his feet and yogurt in the background, right?
All right. You know, with that, we are all
We
out of
gotta
show.
stop.
But we want to thank our guest, Galen Howard, for joining us. Thank you so much, Galen.
Thank you so much. Yes, and a pleasure to grace the court again. Even if it meant having to have a very awkward encounter with Mumbly Mumbleson.
They're all awkward.
They all awkward.
Not a whole lot of not ones. Yeah.
Exactly. But we hope to have you back soon, and we hope
Absolutely.
everyone else will join us as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Jizz.
Jizz.
Yogurt.
No,
Yogurt
no,
jizz.
stop. No, stop the show. No.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.